Good evening, Dreadfuls. I'm Jean.
And I'm Rick.
Yes, we have Rick with us again today. And welcome back to the Dr. Dread podcast, where we explore all things unusual, unsettling, and unexplained. And guess what? We have more lesser-known cryptids for you tonight. Cryptids you may not have heard of before. At least we hope not.
I have looked at the list of this, and a lot of them I haven't heard of.
You haven't? All right, so we're doing the Dover Demon, the Fresno Nightcrawlers, and the Owlman for you tonight.
Okay, the one question I have to ask initially,
yes.
With the Fresno Nightcrawler, does he crawl at night?
They do indeed crawl at night. Well, it depends on what you how you define crawl.
Oh, great. Okay. Carry on.
You'll see when we get to them whether or not these things are actually capable of crawling per se. But yeah, we will get to the Fresno Nightcrawlers. We're starting with the Dover Demon.
Okay, I don't know much at all about the Dover Demon.
Okay, well, the Dover Demon. Our story for the Dover Demon begins on April 21st, 1977. 17-year-old William Bill Bartlett claimed that he was driving down Farm Street in Dover, Massachusetts, which is about 15 miles south of Boston, and he saw a creature, which he described as about 4 feet tall, with glowing orange eyes, no nose or mouth that he could see, in a watermelon-shaped head sitting on top of a stone wall on the side of the road.
Okay, first thing I was going to go to was chupacabra, but that does not sound like the chupacabra.
Doesn't sound like a chupacabra. No. So, actually, the News Entertainment Network, GBH's All Things Considered, got one of their hosts, Arun Rath, to interview with a man named Jeff Bellinger, who's a folklore expert, and Jeff Bellinger actually got to interview some of the witnesses of the Dover Demon.
Okay, is this the same Jeff Bellinger who appeared on some of those ghost shows back in the early 2000s?
Probably.
Because he was really common on those as sort of an occult kind of cryptid expert.
Yeah, that's him. He claims he's a folklore expert, so that sounds like the same guy.
That sounds like, yeah.
Probably. So, but anyway, so taken from Bellinger's interviews of Bill Bartlett, he said that Bill was driving down Farm Street, saw something perched on the rock. Apparently, Bill was going about 40 miles an hour, had some friends in the car with him because it was spring break and they were driving around looking for something to do, as teenagers do.
Yeah, that's true.
Over spring break. So he sees the creature with the glowing eyes sitting on the wall. And he says they glowed in a way an animal's would when light reflects off of animals' eyes.
Right.
And he said it wasn't like anything he'd ever seen before, and it kind of startled him. And he said something to his friends, but they hadn't seen it. And he said he literally turned around to go back and get another look at it, but by then it was gone.
Okay. So probably only about maybe 10 to 15 seconds at the most looking at it?
If that, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, got a glimpse of it for, 10 to 15 seconds at most, probably. But anyway, apparently he went home and drew a picture of it.
Of course he did. He wanted to go in the newspaper.
We'll get to more of that in a minute. But later that same evening, another young man, 15-year-old John Baxter, also reported seeing the same creature, apparently a few streets over on Miller Hill Road.
Described the same way?
Described the same way.
Okay, then. Okay, it's getting interesting now. Okay.
Yeah, apparently John Baxter was leaving his girlfriend's house, and it was around midnight when he saw it. And he saw the exact same creature. He said at first he thought it was like a neighborhood kid sneaking around at night, but then he got closer and he saw, again, the weird bulbous head, the long spindly arms and fingers, and then it just scurried off into the woods, he said.
Oh, that's the damnedest thing. So really, okay, so now you have two accounts in one night.
Two accounts in one night.
That are largely describing the same thing.
And then the next night, a 15-year-old girl named Abby Brabham also said she saw the creature on another street named Springdale Avenue.
What the hell?
Yeah, so again, 15-year-old girl, she was out driving with her boyfriend, and she saw it. And she said that when they first saw it, they described it as looking something like a naked child, but then they got closer and realized that it was not that.
Okay. Were there any differences? So you have 3 accounts now over 2 days. Were there any differences?
No notable differences in how they described it.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes. So, yeah, it's like maybe a 26-hour period of time over the span of 2 days in which you have 3 different accounts of them having seen this same creature. And according to a local news report that, eventually ran on these things, as they do, they said the locations of the sightings, if plotted on a map, lay in a straight line over the course of 2 miles.
Okay, that is very interesting then. So was it reported anywhere else after this in other parts of the city or other parts of the county?
Nowhere else. Apparently, those were the only sightings of it.
Or just during these couple of nights?
Just during those 2 nights, just those 3 sightings over those 2 nights.
Well, then part of me goes, what kind of hallucinogens were these kids on during that period? That's the first question I go to.
Yeah, or what my first thought went to was, okay, if it was only those 3 sightings over just those 2 nights, yeah, what sort of just like weird, sick animal with mange did they see that they mistook for whatever this was?
Right, or the other question to consider is, did these kids know each other?
Oh, well, I don't know how big a city Dover, Massachusetts is, but I don't think it's a very large city, so there's a chance they may have.
Okay, so Dover, Massachusetts is in Norfolk County, Massachusetts, and the population as of the 2020 census was only 5923, so this is a small town.
So small town, so they probably did know each other.
And in a town that small, likely there's one high school.
But still, the only one who may have heard about it from the other 2 is the 15-year-old girl, Abby, who heard about it and reported it the next day. But it sounds like there was not enough span of time between when Bill Bartlett and John Baxter are supposed to have seen it. Because they both saw it on the same night. And it didn't seem like they were hanging out together.
I hate being Scully on this, but you have to be skeptical of something with towns as small as this.
Yeah, you do.
Were there any reports that you saw of like UFOs or any UFO reports?
Okay, we will get to that.
Okay.
I said that the local newspaper reported that the sightings formed a straight line over the course of about 2 miles.
Right.
When you plotted them all out together. The sightings weren't made public until the first half of May, so they sat on them for a little while.
Okay, so we're setting on the last couple weeks of April into May. Okay.
Yeah. And at the time, apparently, there was a local investigator of unexplained phenomenon. I couldn't find any indication of who this investigator was in any of the reports I read on it. But someone did note the similarities between the creatures described here and the creatures in the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter of 1955, which is one of the better documented UFO supposed encounters.
Okay. I don't know much about the Hopkinsville.
Okay, so the Kelly-Hopkinsville encounter is what is thought to be an encounter with extraterrestrial beings that occurred near the communities of Kelly and Hopkinsville in Christian County, Kentucky.
Okay.
In 1955. So the story goes that 5 adults and 7 children went to the Hopkinsville police station to report that small alien creatures from a spaceship had been attacking their house. And they'd apparently been fighting these things off with firearms for about 2 hours before they got in to report it.
What the hell?
Yeah. I'm going to have to do another podcast on just this incident.
And so when was this, in the 50s?
1955. Yeah. And apparently the creatures were described as very similar to this Dover demon. But anyway, yeah, they claimed that there had been between 12 and 15 of these creatures that were involved in this attack. And of course, they came in and said, we've been shooting at these things. They're attacking our house. So police, of course, go to investigate because they're worried that there's, a gunfight going on between, local citizens, that it's not aliens.
Well, it is Kentucky.
Yeah, it is Kentucky. So, of course, that's what the police were worried about. So the police get out there. They don't find anything, no evidence of anything, just, the evidence that you'd expect to find of gunfire, like shell casings and stuff, and some bullet holes in the windows and screen doors of the house. But anyway, UFOologists and UFO enthusiasts still regard it as one of the most significant and well-documented cases of UFO incidents in the history in the course of the history that we have UFO incidents.
I think this is one worth talking about in an additional episode, because if it was in this period in the 50s, this is when Project Blue Book was very, very active.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if they ever ended up looking into this or not.
I am not sure of that, but yeah, I'll have to do a deeper dive on that particular incident. But anyway, the stories that ran on the Dover Demon noted the similarities between the creatures described in that incident and the creatures that were reported as the Dover Demon. But none of the witnesses did report seeing UFOs in accompanying this creature.
No lights in the sky.
No
nothing
lights in the
weird,
sky. Nothing
like
weird.
that?
Nothing other than just seeing the creature.
Interesting. Okay.
But of course, MUFO and other associated groups did end up going to investigate it.
What, MUFON?
Or MUFON, yeah.
Yeah, MUFON investigated.
MUFON did. Yep.
That is interesting. What did MUFON say about it? Did you find anything?
I didn't find anything on what MUFON said about it, but apparently they did have people investigate it.
So what we have are two different accounts of similar creatures roughly like 20 years apart.
Yes. Yeah. And so I have the pictures that the kids drew. So the first one is the first boy who saw it, Bill Bartlett. And that Jeff Ballinger guy, when he did an interview with Bill, Bill actually got to be a very accomplished artist. Apparently he went on to be like a really good fine arts painter.
Okay.
So he actually had a career in art. And this is the drawing that the first boy, Bill Bartlett, drew.
Interesting.
Yes. And then the second one, John Baxter, this is the one he did.
I mean, there's similarities.
You can tell that they do very much look like the same creature. Just one of them is kind of crouched on all fours, and the second one is in a standing position. But other than that, you can tell that they do look like very similar entities.
But with that too, there is a tinge of the grays.
Yes.
The gray aliens, whatever you want to call them, to that. So this would be the 70s. And just trying to think of popular media at the time. What do you have? What do you have in 77?
You've got Star Wars. You've got Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So you do have things like that having been released.
So you have a little bit of social history here that could have an influence.
Yes. Yeah, because it was 1977 was the year that Star Wars and Close Encounters of the Third Kind were both released.
I'm looking. No, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was actually released in November. So
it would have been.
This was April.
Yeah, this was April. So Close Encounters of the Third Kind would have been after this. Okay.
But obviously, there could have been a media blitz.
But yeah, I mean, they were likely running.
Well, yeah,
previews
in
and
April,
promotions for it. Yeah.
So there is that potential. And then Star Wars, I can't remember exactly when. Star Wars came out in May.
Okay.
May 25th of 1977. So it's in very, very close proximity to this event.
Yes. But anyway, so after, it hit the local newspapers, eventually you had enough people believing it that it eventually made its way to under the radar of a man named Loren Coleman, who's a cryptozoologist and author, and he wrote his account of it in a book called Mysterious America, which was published in 1983. And since then, that's where the Dover Demon, he actually is the one who coined the term Dover Demon. He said mostly just because, the alliteration of Dover and demon, and it sounded good.
It just sounded good.
Yeah. Not that there's anything demonic about the way it's described, but nice alliteration. It sounded good.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yes. And since that publication in 1983, the Dover Demon, kind of took on a life of its own, as cryptids tend to do.
One thing that's just got me kind of curious about it is why in the world did they wait a couple weeks to release this?
That I could not find out on why they did. Maybe they just wanted to try to do some sort of investigation on it and make sure that these kids weren't just making this up.
Yeah, potentially stopping mass hysteria.
Yeah.
Or something like that. That's interesting because usually cases like this, these things go viral within like 24 hours. Yeah, I think back one of the most famous things I ever heard on Coast to Coast AM, our art show, the Phoenix Lights.
Oh yeah,
the Phoenix Lights, and that is another episode.
Yes, that's on my list of things to eventually cover.
I mean, you had people from the night it happened calling into art show, for a period of 2 to 3 days after this. That is how quickly it was getting reported.
Yeah, I remember.
And that's
I remember
only,
listening to reruns of those shows with Art taking calls about people calling in.
He took calls for 2 nights. He even had I think it was the mayor of Phoenix on there.
He did.
So it's just very, very interesting why this was just held for weeks. Days I can potentially understand.
Yeah, but remember that the Phoenix Lights, that was in the 90s?
That was 97.
Yeah, that was in the 90s. Remember, this was still in the 70s. So information still didn't disseminate as quickly in the 70s, even in the 90s, much less today.
But then again, the internet was not as ubiquitous with social media at that point in the 90s either, or the 70s. I mean, you had essentially telephone technology, which is the primary way people communicated outside of printed media at that time, or the TV.
Yeah, in the 70s, you're really relying on printed media.
Remind me, these kids, who did they report this to?
Of all the reports, but I don't think I found anything that actually says who they reported it to.
That's interesting to see if there would be a Freedom of Information request, a FOIA on that, to be able to see if they called the cops about it.
Yeah, it would.
Because it just makes the account even weirder. Say if you have 2 kids in one night that call the cops and tell this story, and then, supposedly another one. I kind of discount the third one.
Yeah,
by the
time you get to the second night, yeah.
Such a small town. I kind of discount the third one, but you have 2 within a period of hours.
Yeah, who, given the accounts of what they were doing that night, likely didn't talk to each other between those 2 sightings.
I mean, there's always a potential that
There's a potential, but I mean, you had the first one, Bill, with his group of friends who were just driving around, and then the second one said he was leaving his girlfriend's house, so presumably he'd been at his girlfriend's house that whole time.
Yeah. So just say they reported it to the cops. Now you have this weird case of why the hell would they hold it?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, at least from what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's not like they went out and did a media blitz right then and said, oh my God, look at this, that happened. It was weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Tell their parents and tell the cops?
My guess would be that they told their parents about it, and their parents eventually reported it to either the newspapers or the cops.
That is an interesting thing that is worth exploring, and maybe coming back and doing this after a FOIA request to see if on that night of April 21st, 1977.
Yeah, April 21st, 1977.
That would be interesting to see if there is a FOIA, especially on something like this. Just from my experience working with police departments years ago, weird stuff like this, they tend to hang on to, even outside of the mandatory destruction period that they have for things, simply because
of how odd it is.
Yeah, the odd factor to it. That'd be interesting.
Yes, it would. I want to know, where those initial reports leaked to.
But the media didn't report it till a couple weeks later.
Yeah. So, of course, you have people saying that it was just, a hoax. And you even have people who say that it was things like, a snowy owl based on the size, and that its plumage would have reflected the light. And of course, its eyes would have reflected the light the right way. But you have people saying that the long, spindly arms and figures were supposed to be like partially opened wings and splayed feathers of an owl. But I don't see that in the
Not with what
drawings.
They drew.
Yeah. I think you're reaching trying to say it was a snowy owl.
Yeah.
But what I also find interesting is that it was just those 2 nights of sightings, and that was it.
That's what's increasingly odd.
And that Jeff Ballinger actually commented on that too. He said, what's really interesting to me too is that you would expect copycat sightings, and yet there really haven't been any. This was such a small event in a small town. One day, really, a day and a couple hours. You would expect that other people would have copycats, but they really haven't come up over the last almost 50 years.
The sad thing to that is it kind of gives the story a little bit more tinge of legitimacy. Because he's exactly right. In these types of folklore and pseudoscience, things like this, that people tend to like repeating these stories over time. I mean, the best analogy I can think of is, growing up in Waco, we talked about the Goat Man.
Yep, I remember the Goat Man stories.
Hell, the Goat Man was an institution. If you went to Baylor University, you were indoctrinated your first semester at Baylor knowing about the Goat Man, and don't go into Cameron Park at night unless the Goat Man
because the Goat Man's going to get you.
Never mind the drug dealers down there, but the bigger concern was the Goat Man. That story that was some isolated event that goes back to the 1920s took a life on its own. And it became something persistent in the culture. And you would think for a small community like this, something this crazy would latch on the same sort of way to become a persistent part of the culture.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of like the Jersey Devil.
Yeah, like the Jersey Devil, or the same way Roswell completely took over the UFO sightings.
It just makes this even more interesting, the fact that you just had this sort of flash in the pan for a couple days. And
then nobody ever saw it again.
That's it. That's really interesting. Has there been any other things that have been said about it over the years? I mean, just any sort of media attention to it at all?
Not really. Just the interview with that Jeff Ballinger guy. He talked to the first boy who saw that, Bill Bartlett. He has sort of kept in touch with him over the years, and he said he's kind of gotten tired of telling the story because people ask him to tell it over and over again.
I'm guessing that he's telling the story the same way.
And he says, it's been the same story for
50 years now?
Yeah, for 50 years. And he said he actually kind of feels bad for Bill Bartlett because he said, imagine doing all this work over your life. You're an accomplished painter and artist, and people just ask you about this drawing you did when you were 17 in high school of this weird creature you saw.
That's just another thing that just kind of gives it a tinge of legitimacy. Because, I mean, if this guy's an accomplished painter, hell, he can make a hell of a lot of money going around talking about all this shit and drawing paintings and going to, UFO conventions and shit like that and selling portraits.
Mm-hmm. But
he's not doing
he hasn't done that.
That gives a tinge of legitimacy to it.
Oh, yeah. And, so that is what it is. So before I leave the Dover Demon, I'll leave you with one more quote from the Jeff Ballinger interview on it. And we weren't there back in 1977. Bill was. I spoke to him, and I find his story compelling enough that he doesn't know what he saw. And while it's so easy for people who are skeptical to say, well, maybe it was an animal with mange, maybe it was this, maybe it was an owl. Come on, he lived in that town his whole life. Once you've lived in a place for even a few years, you've probably seen just about every animal you're going to see in that town. You might see a coyote, you might see a turkey, you might see a deer or a skunk. You know the animals and what they look like just from living where you live. And you know when something doesn't look like anything you've ever seen before.
Love or hate the guy, that's a very true statement.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of the different places we've lived over the years. That's true.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I think, a couple years is too long. I mean, 6 months somewhere, you can absolutely...
Yeah, you get used to
see
the wildlife that you see.
So, I think there's a lot of legitimacy to that. That's a lot more interesting case than I actually thought, because there actually is a tinge of legitimacy to this. And you got a guy there that is literally not trying to cash in.
Yeah, not trying to cash in on it.
That was one thing I learned from the Art Bell School of the Paranormal.
Yes, be wary of the people who are clearly trying to cash in on it.
Yeah, I think to the Warrens, and I think to the whole Amityville horror debacle is a perfect example of cashing in for the sake of cashing in. But this doesn't seem that way. That was a good one.
Yeah, even the, I forgot what town it was, but even the Flatwoods monster, the town kind of adopted that one seemingly more than Dover has adopted the Dover Demon.
And there's another part that makes me wonder if the connection to Boston has something to do with the more steeped an area is in history. I mean, you think of what few towns in America has more history, so to speak, and baggage behind their history than Boston. I guess from a historical standpoint, I kind of think of from the perspective of the area is already so steeped in history. Do they have room for one more?
But then you could argue the other side of you have this tiny little town, about 15 miles outside of Boston. Maybe that little town is tired of competing with and being overshadowed by Boston.
That is true.
And if this thing shows up, it might be something for them to latch onto.
And once again, yeah, to your point, that gives a very compelling reason for why haven't they cashed in on it. My God, you go through half of West Texas and they cash in on any random event. I can think of, it's Snyder cashing in on
the white buffalo.
The white buffalo.
One guy who killed one white buffalo, however many,
it was in the 1800s.
200 years ago now.
It gives some credibility to this. It really does. I just want to know a FOIA request if one's ever been done on this.
Yeah, I'd love to find out more about it.
Yeah, if anybody out there that lives in Boston or anywhere around there can do a FOIA request, let us know. I would be intensely interested in that, to know if the kids called the cops, the parents called. I just want to know.
Yeah, I want to know
how it reached the police.
Yeah, I want to know how the story made its way from the kids who initially saw it to where it actually got reported in local media.
Yeah, presumably the cops knew about it before the media did.
Yeah, presumably.
At least one would think. Generally, that's how it works. And what was the next one you've got?
The Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Do they crawl at night? I still want to answer that question.
They walk at night.
Okay. Please go on.
So the Fresno Nightcrawlers, they're a more recent one. They first popped up in 2007.
Okay, that is recent.
Yes, they're recent. When a resident of Fresno, California, who identified himself only as Jose, brought some front doorbell surveillance footage from his front lawn to a television station called Univision, and then later to a paranormal investigator named Victor Camacho. And he was frightened by what he saw on his video footage and wanted an explanation for what it was. And so, of course, the grainy footage that eventually went viral looked like a pair of white pants walking across the lawn.
Okay.
Yes. So, yeah, I have an illustration of what the Fresno Nightcrawlers are supposed to look like for you.
Okay, that's creepy as shit.
You think they're creepy?
That's creepy as shit.
You think they're creepy?
That's creepy as shit.
Okay, hold on. I found what I think is the original video of the Fresno Nightcrawlers. So, yeah, let me play that for you. So, yeah.
What the hell?
So that's the original Fresno Nightcrawler footage. Yeah, I'll try to find a shorter clip of that video so you don't have to listen to a bunch of other YouTubers yap about the Nightcrawlers just to get a picture of those videos. But I will link some of the photos of the Fresno Nightcrawlers if you want to just look at those. We can put up.
I can put them in.
But yeah, the best way I can describe them to you now, like a pair of pale, ghostly white pants. I think they almost kind of look like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters if the Marshmallow Man was just a pair of legs. Yeah, just a pair of squishy, puffy looking, white legs walking around with a little tiny lump for a head.
That is creepy.
You think they're creepy?
I think they're creepy.
You think they're creepy? Apparently people think they're cute.
I think they're creepy as hell.
So anyway, yeah, this guy, Jose, brought this footage to the Univision television station and paranormal investigator Victor Camacho, and it made its way to the internet, and the internet does what the internet does with it.
Of course. You said this is like 07, right?
07, yes.
Oh, this is getting into the early parts of YouTube.
Early days of YouTube. So yeah, the internet does what the internet does with these things, and it kind of exploded and took on a life of its own. Apparently that Victor Camacho guy said Jose, whoever he was, didn't even want to leave his house. He was so freaked out by what he saw. And he said he stayed home for a couple weeks. And he said he didn't think it was possible that someone could have made this just to try to fool a TV station.
Now, what's interesting, I think it's worth noting from a tech standpoint, this is 07.
Yeah, this is 07.
This is before the advent of the Ring cameras or anything like that. I mean, that came along almost like 10 years later. So if he had a camera, we're talking the old industrial security kind of cameras.
Yeah, old school security cameras.
That probably recorded on VHS tapes. From what you just showed me, that looks like...
It looks like VHS tape footage. Yeah. It does, yeah. God, that's weird to think that even as recently as 2007, people were still recording surveillance and CC footage on VHS tapes.
Yeah, it was largely...
God damn, that's weird to think.
Probably, I would say, really they started picking up around 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
And really, it was COVID that really pushed the doorbell cameras into the forefront, at least from what I've noticed about it, at least here around here. But yeah, but that footage looks like VHS to me.
It does.
It does not look digital at all. And, you had to take everything you see with VHS with a grain of salt because there's always latent noise in the image. The fuzzy, snowy stuff you see in there.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So like I said, the video went up on the internet and the internet did what the internet did with it. Apparently a version of it got over 1.8 million views on YouTube with commenters saying things like absolutely terrifying and so freaky.
That was early YouTube, so
yeah.
Absolutely.
That was early YouTube. Yeah, like I said, I describe them as like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but just his legs. And apparently they're supposed to be just a little under 5 feet tall. I'm not sure how people are estimating that from those videos, but
yeah, just seeing that clip, I don't understand how they would be getting a reference. Because there's nothing in the background to really give you much of a reference.
I have no idea how people are arriving at that number, but sure. So apparently in 2010, the video was featured on an episode of the television show Fact or Fake.
Oh, I remember that show on the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
I remember that shitty show.
Yeah, apparently a former FBI agent named Ben Hansen and his team tried to recreate the footage with puppets and even dressing up children in a white sheet, and they couldn't really recreate it and said it was unexplainable. Yep. And so since then, the Fresno Nightcrawler has still been featured on many other shows, like the History Channel series The Proof is Out There, the YouTube series Monsters Dissected, and podcasts like Camp Monsters and Mega Strange. And now us.
Well, I have to ask my obligatory question with any cryptid. Was it the Chupacabra?
It was not the Chupacabra.
Are we certain about this is California?
That does not look like the Chupacabra. That looks nothing like the Chupacabra. Yeah. And then in 2011, a second video surfaced of them.
Okay, from the same area? Or
sort of. This one's supposed to be walking across Yosemite Lakes Park, which is near Oakhurst, California, about 50 miles north of Fresno.
Okay, is this near the national park?
No. Apparently it's something different. This is near Oakhurst. I don't think Oakhurst is by Yosemite National Park.
Okay.
Just saying. But anyway, this is the 2011 one.
What the hell?
I think this is the 2011 one. There's a lot of duplicates now, but I believe that is the 2011 one.
Well, I'm just going to say just about the video quality. The video quality is much, much better than the original. So
well, remember, it's 2007 to 2011, so you've got 4 years of improvement there.
Well, by 11, I think a lot of closed circuit cameras were moving to hard drive based, digital based.
Yeah.
So
it probably wouldn't have been VHS anymore, and it wasn't the same guy who produced that one. I can't find anything on where this one actually came from, except that it was supposed to have come from Yosemite Lakes Park.
Okay. Yeah, the quality of that one looks better. It's just weird.
Yes, it's very weird. And what's unique about the Fresno Nightcrawlers is that instead of just having these sort of amorphous folkloric origins of where they came from, like Bigfoot or even like the Jersey Devil and the Chupacabra, that you can really trace this back to, okay, it started in 2007 with this video.
Well, that whole time period is and good Lord, we're dating ourselves a lot, but the whole period is interesting because you saw so many things on the internet catapult at that point.
Yeah, because when did YouTube really kick off?
2006.
Yeah, so it was right in that. Oh God, that was the golden days of YouTube.
It was. So you had Slender Man.
Yeah, that was around the time Slender Man came up.
Give or take a couple years. So you're having these things, these kind of horror memes, sort of that are being created all around that time period. Looking at that video, I don't know how the hell outside of CGI.
Yeah, I am not a digital media person, so I have no. I can't even
if
begin
I'm
to
wrong
guess.
on that,
I have no
correct
idea.
me. But just my understanding of that, I don't know how the hell you do that.
Yeah, I have no idea. I am the wrong person to ask on that.
You asked me today if this came out today.
I'd say, yeah, somebody CGI'd that.
Well, hell, you can use Dolly and ChatGPT and create videos from there to your heart's content for all the nightmares shit you want to make. But at this period, it gives a little bit more validity to it, but still, it's just strange. It's the only way I can describe it. It's just strange in a very unsettling sort of way.
Yeah, almost like an uncanny valley
kind of
vibe to it.
Has it been spotted anywhere else?
No, not really anywhere else. Apparently, some spotty reports of creatures sort of similar to the Fresno Nightcrawler have been seen in Carmel, Yosemite, and Billings, Montana, but people generally agree that the only really known occurrences of the Fresno Nightcrawlers have been in Fresno and then in that park near Oakhurst.
So the Fresno video and then the OG video and then the
2011 one from Yosemite Lakes Park near Oakhurst.
Well, it is as much media exposure as it got. It wouldn't surprise me if there's copycats of it, especially in this day and age.
Oh yeah, I'm sure people have tried to copy it by this point. But yeah, unlike what happened with the Dover Demon, apparently Fresno has just embraced the Fresno Nightcrawlers completely. People love the Fresno Nightcrawlers there. But apparently they have a very devoted following in Fresno, and artists do Fresno Nightcrawler everything. Stickers, t-shirts, plushies. Someone even makes a perfume about it. Yep. Apparently a local artist named Demelza Salisbury, who sells little handmade Fresno Nightcrawler plushies on Etsy through her business Nerdbird Studios, says a lot of folks just love the funky little dude.
Go out and make your money.
And there's some little Fresno Nightcrawler plushies.
Oh, go out and make your money.
Go out and make your money. Look at them. See, they're cute.
Well, yeah, they're making it not look terrifying like it is in that damn video.
They don't look that different from the video. Okay, I'm with the artists, the Fresno artists on this one. I think they're kind of cute looking.
I'm watching the video again. Holy shit, that is terrifying. What the actual fuck am I seeing? Okay, I'm looking at the OG one right now.
Yeah.
That is absolutely VHS.
Yeah, it really does have a VHS general appearance to it.
I think what creeps me out is the way it's walking. I don't know what it is about the way it walks. It just absolutely creeps me out.
Yeah, because it's almost like the way human legs walk, but it's a little off.
Off, yeah.
So yeah, like I said, uncanny valley a little bit. But yeah, apparently Laura Splotch, who's another local Fresno artist and the director at Storyland, the art director at Storyland, which is a children's theme park in Fresno, says, "These really intrigue me because they're from Fresno. They look unique and different. It's a weird thing to fake, but if they're real, that's even weirder."
I'll agree with that.
I'll agree with that.
There's actually one at Yosemite National Park.
Oh, there is?
There is a video from Yosemite National Park, and I'm looking at that. That one just looks fake.
Yeah, like I said, I'm sure there are other.
I'm sure
there are other recreations of these since then.
The only one that really, really bothers me is that original one. That original one from Fresno is like something else. Apparently, there's some in Poland too.
Yeah, like I said, they've been spotted various other places, but yeah, apparently the only one that people think is actually legit is the Fresno one.
Oh, this one in Poland does not look legit. No, this is some dude on stilts. Seriously, that's some dude on stilts. Now, the only one that really kind of bothers me is that first one.
Yeah. So, yeah, people in Fresno love it, but some people actually say there's one person who actually says of it, in some ways it's pretty, quote, Fresno that our local cryptid is a puppet made from pajama pants.
Well, yeah.
So, I mean, there is that. There are people who have that attitude toward it, but for the most part, it seems like the people of Fresno love the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Some people are saying that it's a deer walking on its back legs.
Then where's the rest of it?
I know.
Like I said, it looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man if he were just a pair of legs and a little blob for a head.
Now, I've been in the wilderness a lot and hunting most of my life, And I've never seen a damn deer stand upright and be able to walk 30 feet.
Okay, I've seen deer stand up on their hind legs, and even when they are standing on their hind legs, the top half of them doesn't disappear.
Yeah, that's true.
There is no top half to these things.
And the other theory is it's a primate with no arms.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how much I really believe that one.
Still, most primates, even if they don't have arms, still have a torso that their head is attached to. This thing does not have a torso. It is legs with a little blob on top for a head.
See, what I'm curious about is I can't find the video from Billings, Montana. I'd be curious to see that one.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if that one is any different. But anyway, but yes, possible debunking of the Fresno Nightcrawler. So yeah, we've seen it. We've talked about it. Now I have to talk about possible debunking. So of course I did some digging around Reddit, as I usually do with all of these cryptids. And a Reddit user by the Reddit name of Evening Piccolo 882 on the subreddit Cryptids claims that a filmmaker who lives in Oakhurst, near where the second one came out, admitted to having had a hand in creating the Fresno Nightcrawlers.
Like the original one? Or
yeah, like the original one.
Not just the Oakhurst one.
Yeah, not the original one. I'm not going to use their names because apparently that there's Facebook messages of him admitting that he made it, and it's their actual names. I'm not going to use their names because I don't know how they feel about the publicity. But one of Evening Piccolo's Facebook friends somehow got chatting with this Oakhurst filmmaker about the Fresno Nightcrawlers, and he had this to say. He said, "I may have had something to do with them, at least one of them. It started out as part of a fake or real challenge in a paranormal TV show that never happened with us. It got out and then swept through the entire world. I never told anyone." And then later he said, "I will just drop this here. It's the original video that swept the world. I may or may not have created it, and it's a linked video to the original."
Like the original Fresno
like the OG Fresno Nightcrawler one. But note, this is more than a two-way conversation. There are reactions from other people in this Facebook chat, not just Evening Piccolo's friend and the Oakhurst filmmaker. So, take all that with a grain of salt. He may have, quote, admitted it just to get a reaction out of these people.
Well, anything with this type of stuff.
Yeah, and
people quote unquote admit to shit
and
just to get publicity.
This is a screenshot of these fake Facebook messages that was posted on Reddit. So another Reddit user, their username looks like a variation of their real name, so I'm not going to give that name. But they replied to that post saying, "It's a small world. My husband says that the Oakhurst filmmaker and his friends used to always pull weird pranks in high school, though, so who knows? Maybe he did make up the Fresno Nightcrawlers or maybe not." Yep, and a reply to that post said, "Real small world. I'm from about 30 north of Oakhurst and have always wondered about the fact that Oakhurst is roughly halfway between both Nightcrawler videos." And again, take that one with a grain of salt because Oakhurst is not halfway between them.
Well,
that park, that Yosemite Lakes Park, is about halfway between Fresno and Oakhurst.
Well, geography is not some people's strong suit.
Geography's not a strong suit here in America. So, that bit may have been wrong. But then a later post, again, from Evening Piccolo 882, the original poster, commented on that original thread saying, "Update, he deleted his original comment claiming to have created the creatures and posted a new comment that says, 'Had to go dark again, IYK. If you know, you know.'"
I think that's somebody trying to get publicity.
It sounds like somebody trying to get publicity.
By being cryptic.
Yes. But, I have to do my due diligence and report everything I found on it, so.
Yeah, I mean, is this one something that absolutely could probably be produced at that time period? Yeah, absolutely it is. It's weird looking, I will give you that. And I think all the ones after 2011 just look like bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because the technology at that point was getting to
the point where anybody can CGI it. Yeah.
It was getting more accessible. But if the guy was actually working with some sort of film studio or he had some sort of training in that way, I'm sure you could make it. Yeah, especially at that time period. But what better way to cover it up than a grainy-ass VHS camera?
Yep.
Let's just be honest. I mean, it looks like shit. And I think that was part of
that's part of what adds to the creepiness of it. Yeah. It looks like a shit closed circuit VHS tape.
Well, okay, this is '07. We're off the heels of, 6, 7 years off the Blair Witch Project. And how many horror movies in the early 2000s relied on like grainy handheld cameras and shit like that? I mean, that was in vogue at the time.
Yes, it was. I still remember being so disappointed by the Blair Witch Project.
That movie scared the shit out of me.
Well, it was not. It all I heard. Oh my God, the Blair Witch Project's so damn creepy. Oh my God, it's so scary. Finally went and saw it, and I was like, oh.
I knew a dude in high school that used to run around like the truck people like we were, the lifted trucks and shit. He went and saw that movie and ended up walking out and throwing up.
Because of how scared he was, or from getting motion sick from the bad found footage effect?
He said it was motion sickness, but I think he got scared. Now, granted, when I saw the sumbitch in theaters, I walked out twice because it scared the shit out of me. I'll freely admit it scared the shit out of me. I could sit through Saw. I could sit through any of that type of butchery and debauchery, and that shit didn't bother me one bit. But that damn Blair Witch Project scared the hell out of me. I don't know why. That and The Ring.
I was disappointed in that one too. That was another one that I heard people like, oh my God, it's so scary, it's so scary, it's so scary. And then it wasn't.
This shit with this Fresno Nightcrawler could have absolutely been something the Blair Witch Project or The Ring, and it would have solidified people having heart attacks. It would have.
Now that ending scene of The Ring where the girl crawls out of the TV. Now I'm imagining her crawling out of the TV with a couple of the Fresno Nightcrawlers crawling out too.
Starting world dominion right there doing that shit. Oh God, it's scary as hell. Well, if it's fake or not, is it making Fresno some money? Apparently so.
Apparently it is. Apparently people are making bank off of Fresno Nightcrawler everything. I mean, granted, I do want a Fresno Nightcrawler little plushie now.
I think they're kind of cool.
They're cute.
It's better than the video. I could tolerate those better than the video. But at this point, San Luis Obispo needs their own thing for their own skinwalker they have there that we heard.
Oh, yeah, the skinwalker we heard in San Luis Obispo. Oh, let's see. I'll have to tell that story when I talk about skinwalkers.
There's enough to do a whole series of 5 to 10 videos on skinwalkers.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many accounts of that.
Skinwalkers are like Mothman. They're one that's going to need their own episode.
Or 2 or 3 or 4.
Yeah. Possibly multiple.
I mean, there's so many good, compelling ones on it. A Fresno Nightcrawler. Well, that's disturbing and a cash cow, and I kind of like it.
Yep. So anyway, our last cryptid for this episode, the Owlman.
The Owlman?
The Owlman.
Where does the Owlman hail from?
Cornwall, England.
So when we're talking about the Owlman, we're not talking about the supervillain alternate universe counterpart of Batman, right?
No, not that Owlman.
That's the only Owlman I know.
Not that Owlman. Yes, I know. While I was searching for Owlman, that kept trying to show up in my search results while I was doing my research, and it annoyed me.
Because it's the one true Owlman. I read the comic books. I know it. So this is from Cornwall?
Yes.
Okay, so what is the Cornwall Owlman?
So, 1976. A paranormal researcher by the name of Tony Shields, or Doc as he liked to be called, came forward claiming that he had investigated a report from 2 young girls on holiday in the village of Mounan, which is apparently in Cornwall, England. And I had to look. Cornwall is like the very southwestern tip of the island.
Okay. I don't know my UK geography
I don't know my
too
UK
well.
geography as well as I should either, but yes, Cornwall is like a county sort of England.
Okay.
I mean, they don't have counties the same way we have state counties here, but like a county of England, very southwestern corner of the whole British island. So that area. So anyway, he came forward. He's 2 young girls on holiday in the village of Mounan, which is in Cornwall. And they saw a huge winged creature hovering above the church there on April 17th, 1976. So these 2 girls, June, who was 12, and Vicky, who was 9, They were on holiday, camping with their family in Mountain. They'd stopped for a picnic in the woods near the St. Stephen's Church there. And Vicky and June had wandered off to go play in the woods near the cemetery while their parents set up for a picnic. And all of a sudden, the children's parents heard them screaming coming from over near the church. So they looked over. The two girls came sprinting back toward the car, and they were hysterical, saying that they needed to leave immediately. So they all went back to the campsite, away from the church, and then they finally were able to explain what they had seen over by the church. When the girls had wandered away toward the cemetery by the church to play, they'd heard a strange sound from up above them, and they looked up to find a giant bird-like human flying above the church's tower.
It was the super villain Owlman.
It was not. But anyway, according to the girl's story, they were so frightened by this feathered bird man, they said, that they insisted to their father, Don, that they leave immediately, cut short the family holiday, and just go. So they were leaving, and later the girl's parents found out that this man, Doc Shields, this paranormal investigator, had been in the area that same day. And
He was the Owlman.
Well, they thought he was, because apparently Doc Shields is Britain's best-known surrealist, magician, illusionist, prankster, known hoaxer, trickster, artist-type figure. Don, the father, thought that that this was another one of his hoaxes, and he had scared the girls.
Did he do it?
That's still a question.
Well, he's dead now. I just looked that up.
Yeah, that's still a question. We don't know if the Owlman was a hoax of his or not, but apparently Don tracked down Doc Shields at a local fair nearby and accused him of, pulling a traumatic hoax on his daughters. And Shields denied knowing anything about it, but of course he did want to speak to the girls to find out more. Of course their father, Don, said, "No, you're not going anywhere near my daughters," but the older daughter did draw a sketch of the Owlman, and they did give it to Doc Shields. So, there is the photo that the little girl June drew of the Owlman.
It's the alternate universe version of Batman. That's what it looks like. I'm just being honest. That's what it looks like. How old was this kid that drew that?
She was 12.
Okay, I can give her a pass for that.
Yeah, she's 12. So yeah, don't critique her too hard. She's 12.
So were there any other reports?
Oh yes, there were other reports. So after this first report, Doc Shields reported the Owlman encounter to a magazine called 40 and Times, which actually apparently still exists. And it's a monthly magazine devoted to strange phenomena.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, very cool. So apparently you can still find that. And so from this first sighting, that he became known as the Owlman. Later that same year, on July 3rd, another 14-year-old girl named Sally Chapman was camping in the same area with her friend Barbara Perry, still in that mountain village near that church. And according to her account, she was outside her tent and heard a hissing sound and turned around to see what looked like an owl who was as big as a man with pointed ears and red eyes.
Holy shit.
Yes, and the girls reported that the creature flew up into the air, revealing black pincher-like claws.
Has anybody ever thought it might be an owl nesting in the tower?
Well, that is a possible explanation, is that it's just a very large owl. But anyway, that's not the last time that the creature was seen. It was seen again in June 1978. One girl, apparently alone this time, saw something that she described as like a devil vanish up into the trees by the church. And then later that same year in August, 3 girls who were on vacation from France saw the beast again. This time it was watching them from a high tree branch before again flew upward and vanished.
Interesting.
Yes.
Still in the same vicinity and same area.
Still all in that same area in that village. Let me make sure I'm getting the village name right. Mountain. Yes, I'm getting that right.
Okay.
Near the St. Stephen's Church.
Well, I'm sure owls are very common in like those
it
church
is known
yards
that it is known that they
towers.
roost in those church towers. Yes. Okay. A researcher named Jonathan Downs acknowledges that you have to take the 1976 sightings with a grain of salt because they did both involve Doc Shields, and he has been known to have made other hoaxes. But this researcher, Jonathan Downs, claims to have interviewed another young man who he calls Gavin, who encountered the Owlman in 1989. So we're moving past the late 70s now. Okay. This guy claims to have seen it in 1989. Shields was not involved with this one. It was apparently just Gavin and his girlfriend who were, again, in that same area and saw a creature they described as about 5 feet tall, had the legs and high ankles, and the feet were large and black with 2 huge toes on what was visible to them. And it was supposed to be gray and brown with, like glowing reflective eyes like you would expect to see on an owl.
Okay. So you've got a 10-year period now of sighting. Was there anything after the 80s?
The last sighting of it was in 1995. A tourist from Chicago wrote into the Western Morning News in Truro claiming to have seen the Owlman. She described it as with a ghastly face, a wide mouth, glowing eyes, and pointed ears, as well as clawed wings.
So all these stories, what do they have in common? They're all describing these extremely large owls.
All very large bird-like creatures. Usually have glowing eyes. Most of them have the pointed ears, which makes me think of not a barn owl, screech owl. Which makes me think of screech owls because they have the feathers that look like they point up with horns on the top of their head.
There's also another type of owl called the Eurasian eagle owl that has the pointy kind of.
That is ears. One of the.
Oh, that is one of the theories.
That is one of the theories, is that it's the Eurasian eagle owl, just a very large one.
Just didn't know they could get that damn big.
I didn't think they got that big either, but that is one of the theories. So that was the last time it was seen, but according to legend, people did hear a loud owl-like sound at night in the area around the church as recently as the year 2000.
Okay. Well, and that at 2000, that Doc Shields, who's the hoaxer, that would have put him probably, in his 60s?
From what I've seen of the rest of these, he didn't seem to have been involved in any of the sightings past the 2 in 76.
Well, he died aged 86 in July of 2024. It just makes me wonder, the cutoff time is interesting because, you've got all these reports that could have been while he was in his 30s or 40s. Mm-hmm. And then it starts dying down, especially after 2000 where, presumably he would have been close to his 60s.
Right.
Who knows if the guy actually did it or not, but there's just a interesting fact pattern you can kind of go down there with it too. What's interesting to me about the whole thing is you got that first father that immediately goes to this guy and says, "You did it."
Yeah, and is immediately like, "You asshole, you did it."
I'm more curious about that. Why? What was the connection there?
Apparently, he was just already known for being kind of a prankster and a hoaxer at this time.
Okay.
Nothing and he just happened to find out later in the day after they'd already left the area that dude was in the area.
Oh.
Yeah, and so I guess it just kind of clicked in his mind. It's like, oh, that asshole did it.
This one's interesting because, you got a guy that absolutely could be the purveyor of the hoax. There's lots of things that fit there, but then there's lots of things that don't either.
Things that don't, yeah. Because, again, the only 2 sightings that Doc Shields is known to have been involved in are those original 2 from 1976.
Yeah. Was there a difference in the reports? Just any compelling differences between the 70s and 80s reports?
No major differences really stick out. Just the most recent sighting, the tourist from Chicago, called it again a man bird, just with a ghastly face and a wide mouth. None of the other reports talk about a wide mouth of any kind. But that's the only thing that really sticks out. But again, the 1995 one does report on the pointy ears again.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of animals there. There is a strong likelihood that Eurasian eagle owl is in the area.
Yeah, and that is one of the possible explanations for it, is that, people are just seeing a very large owl.
But that's just a big damn owl.
But again, yeah, the owls are known to nest in church towers. It's likely that owls do live there. And apparently owls are known to appear larger than they actually are in the dark, especially if you have light reflecting off their eyes. If people are looking up and seeing this thing flying up in the air, it's possible that they're just, misidentifying the distance between themselves and the owl and thinking that it's further away and therefore larger than it actually is.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because if you're just looking straight up in the sky and you don't really have anything directly in your field of vision for frame of reference, it is possible to just, misidentify how close the owl is to you. And therefore, if you think it's further away than it actually is, you judge it as being larger than it is.
Yeah, that is true. What I also find interesting is that whole parish church that they're talking about, that St. Malnin and St. Stephen's Church, most of it dates back to the 13th century. So we're talking a ton of history. Mm-hmm. A ton of history there. And I don't know if there's any other paranormal aspects to that place at all.
I don't know. That'd be interesting to see if there's any other paranormal stories associated, like any haunting stories or anything associated with that church.
It's just funny when you have these type of phenomena that coincide with each other. But I mean, there's no doubting looking at this that this is extremely old. And that churchyard, I'd be curious to know how far back that churchyard, the cemetery, dates to. Because if the church dates back to the 13th century, presumably you've got burials that go back to the
far
14th century, the earliest. It goes without saying. I think you did that one thing on the stone tape theory. That there is.
Yeah, I did a short video on the stone tape theory. You did a short on the
stone tape theory. And I find it interesting, these kind of recurring things. Yeah, of course, owls will nest and they'll leave and stuff like that. But then again, it makes me wonder if there is something else weirder to this, that it may be something from the stone tape theory or something of that nature.
Could be.
I mean, the history's there. And that's what.
Yeah,
what's
that is actually a theory that I have not seen circulating around on a possible explanation for it.
Yeah, it is.
Is that maybe there was a bizarre creature there once, and now you have a stone tape theory type residual haunting of it showing up every now and then.
Yeah, I was trying to see the reconstruction history on that church. Apparently, the church caved in the 1860s. They rebuilt it by the 1880s, and yeah, it's been largely the same since the 1880s. Which every time you do reconstruction projects on anything old, it tends to
yes. If you do believe in the paranormal and hauntings in any variety, you know that any sort of renovations or reconstructions tend to stir things up a bit.
Yeah, I was looking specifically to see if there was anything done to it around the 70s.
Doesn't look like it.
No, not really. That's I haven't done a huge history into it, but most of it really goes back to the 1880s when they did a pretty significant reconstruction of it. Either way, it's architecturally it's beautiful. It's like a very beautiful old churchyard, and I could see why people would camp in the woods around there. And I don't know, it's interesting, but I still hold the Owlman as the arch nemesis of Batman from the alternate universe, and that's what they're seeing.
Yeah. Well, again, theory one is that it's just a very large owl, misestimating how big it actually is.
Which is probably the most plausible theory.
Yep. The second theory is that it is just a hoax.
And it died with that guy.
It was just a hoax. Most likely perpetrated by Doc Shields. Again, he was known as, a prankster and a hoaxer and a self-proclaimed monster hunter. Apparently, at the same time the Owlman was being seen, there was a sea monster called Morgwar, who was also witnessed in nearby waters, and Shields was attempting to raise the sea monster while the BBC filmed it.
So he was trying to get the BBC to film
calling up this sea monster.
Cornwall's
apparently.
Version of the Loch Ness Monster.
Evidently. And he actually is known to have faked photos of the Loch Ness Monster also.
No shit.
Yep. It is now known that Doc Shields faked 2 previously acclaimed photos of the Loch Ness Monster.
That sounds about right for somebody like that.
Yeah. So apparently he was in the area working on this Morgwar sea monster thing. He's already known to have faked photos of the Loch Ness monster, and now he just happens to be in that area and come across reports of this Owlman. But one notable feature that the witnesses did describe on the Owlman was that it did have backward bending legs like a bird does, which would have been difficult to fake in a costume.
Yeah, that would have been difficult, which goes more to theory A, that it's just some huge mutant.
A very large, an exceptionally large owl. And then, of course, option 3 is that Owlman actually is a cryptid.
And he's just hanging out
some
in
previously
churchyard.
Unexplained creature. Yeah, and he's just hanging out in the churchyard.
Doesn't come out very often, every 20 years now or something like that?
Oh, well, it's been longer than that now.
Oh, yeah, about 25 years.
The last sighting was 95. People thought they may have heard it in 2000, but yeah, the last actual sighting was 95.
And he needs to come out and say hi. It's been about 30 years. Well, the good part about the story, I have to say, is good on that Doc Shields for wasting the BBC's time. I don't know why. I latched on to that part.
Clarkson got kicked off the BBC, so Jeremy Clarkson would approve.
Oh, I think Jeremy Clarkson would absolutely approve because fuck the BBC. That's his whole view of things. He can't punch anybody over a ham sandwich or whatever it was. So either way, I mean, it's a beautiful churchyard. It's something, if I ever went to England, I'd absolutely want to go see this 13th century architecture.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, it's a grade 2 listed parish church, which means that they're doing a lot of significant renovations on it.
Oh, nice.
Trying to keep it up, which is...
Well, good. Good for them.
Which is cool.
Good for them. But yeah, there's another drawing of the Owlman.
Did AI do that?
No, I think just an artist did this one at some point who read the stories about the Owlman.
It's got that big...
It's got the big ghastly grin.
Ghastly grin.
Yeah, the ghastly face with a wide mouth description.
So the question remains, is Cornwall making money off of this?
Not from what I can tell.
So they haven't got into merch?
It doesn't seem like it.
Did they get into merch over the Loch Ness Monster substitute or whatever?
I don't know. I wasn't really looking into that one.
Well, you need to do another look for cryptids into that and,
yes,
and
I'll have
see if
to
they
look
made money
into,
off of it.
I'll have to look into the sea monster. See if anybody made money off of that. I might have to do a whole episode on just crazy Doc Shields and his exploits.
Oh, I think it'd be interesting. But I don't know why that's just from my historical and legal perspective of things. The first question I want to ask when I hear about cryptids is
who's making money off of it?
Who's making money off of it? Because obviously you either have some decent accounts or you just have somebody weaved a hell of a story to be able to convince that many people that something like that exists. Apparently, Owlman didn't really go with it too much.
No, Owlman kind of disappeared after 1995.
So no other reports or anything after 95?
95 was the last sighting, just like I said, just as late as 2000. Yeah, as recently as 2000 as people reported hearing like an especially loud owl sound. But that could just be owls.
That could just be owls, yeah.
That could just be weird acoustics of the tower making it sound louder than they are.
So just to kind of wrap all these up, it seems like the one that made the most money has been the Nightcrawlers.
Was the Fresno Nightcrawler. But again, that's not like the creator of it making money off of it. That's just local residents who just are happy to have a goofy little cryptid for the Fresno area.
Oh, folklore needs all the help
making their art off
get.
of it. Yeah,
folklore needs all the help.
Yeah, like history, like Dr. Parrish said, history needs all the help it can get. So does folklore. And the damnedest one that I didn't give a lot of credit to, that seems like it has a tinge of legitimacy to, because you don't have anybody making money off of it. Yeah, the Dover Demon.
Yeah,
you just have like the original guy. Bill Bartlett, who the original person who cited it, just went on to be an artist and didn't do anything else with it.
I mean, there's something to say about that for somebody who has a sighting like that and just doesn't do shit with it. Now, I forgot to ask this. Did that Doc Shields ever do any sort of publicity on the Owlman? or tried to take advantage
As
of it?
far as I can tell, besides reporting it to that magazine, whatever it was called, give me just a second. Yeah, besides reporting it to the 40 and Times magazine, doesn't seem like it.
I find that very interesting for a guy who seems like he made a whole career off of being a huckster.
I know.
Hell, you would think somebody like that would be out there trying to sell the BBC, going up into towers, trying to find where
Going
the
to hunt
Owlman
down
sleeps.
the Owlman. I know, especially if he was already in the area going after the sea monster.
It's mildly interesting, at least from a bullshit point of view. You know, how much is somebody trying to bullshit? Hey, but at least he bullshit the BBC, so
Yep.
I got to give him credit for that.
Can't knock him for that. All right, so that's it. Hopefully you learned about a few new cryptids tonight. And if you like the episode, then make sure you like and subscribe and do all the things for us. Thank you for listening.